this point, we will call to order this meeting of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready and begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I wanted to apologize. My name is Jason Greeno, and I'm sitting as chair today because our chair has stepped away for today. So you'll have to bear with me. I have a little bit of a cold. We can do roll call at this point.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
I'm here.
Commissioner Howard? Present. Chair Greeno?
Here. All right, with that, we will do public comment. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. After receiving recognition from the chair, please give your name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment at this time? Okay, seeing no public comment, we can move on to our consent agenda. Oh, I was going to read it.
I'll second.
I guess we can pull the vote. Oh, any public comment on our consent agenda? Seeing no public comment, please pull the vote.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chair Greeno?
Yes. Okay, so with the consent of the board, we have Mr. Dominic, Mr. Mello here from our Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Service Authority. Would it be possible, or would you be willing if we move that to the top of the list?
That's fine
And
with me.
take care of that right now? All right, we'll do that.
We have to adjourn as the Solid Waste Management Authority, reconvene as the Abatement Authority.
Okay. At this point, we are going to adjourn as the Solid Waste Management Authority, and we will reconvene as the Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Authority. So, I don't. How are you doing, Mr.
Hello, good. So we got our first quarter report. Pretty typical on the RVs, 3 RVs there, and then 2 automobiles. And then we're sitting good budget-wise with funds. You got hair? Otherwise, we're doing good. You guys have any questions I can answer?
Any questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for your report, and good work. That's excellent.
Excellent, thank you.
That's
Thanks,
5.
Dominic.
That's 5 abandoned vehicles and RVs, or no, that's 3 RVs and 2 vehicles that aren't on our streets anymore because of your work.
Exactly. Especially the RVs, they're problematic when they accumulate.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will adjourn as
And as long as we're here with Mr. Mello, I thought I would highlight that we really appreciate his ongoing work as code enforcement officer, both dealing with blight, illegal dumping, and some of the dumping that's happened at the Crescent City landfill. And so his efforts are really appreciated by this agency.
Okay, and before we adjourn, is there any public comment on the report? All right, seeing no public comment, we will adjourn as the Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Service Authority, and we will reconvene as the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. And we will move on to agenda item number 2, Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Vice Chair Greenow. So starting with the Director's Report, As usual, the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority continues to operate the Klamath, Gasky, and Del Norte County transfer stations and to provide required monitoring, accounting, and reports to overseeing agencies. Authority staff provide these services without any financial support from the City of Crescent City or the County of Del Norte and without receiving a penny in taxes. Rates charged at authority-managed facilities continue to be lower than other similar facilities in Humboldt or Curry County. The Del Norte County Transfer Station will be closed for Christmas on Wednesday, the 25th of December, and on New Year's Day, Wednesday, the 1st of January. Recology Del Norte customers who normally have collections on Thursday or Friday of those weeks will have their collection services delayed by 1 day. We're also continuing to offer our tree cycling service. We're happy to partner with Hambro on that, but for those of you looking to recycle your Christmas trees, your holiday trees, we will be accepting those at the Del Norte County Transfer Station for no charge through January 31st. We do ask that you remove all tinsel and ornaments, and if it's flocked, meaning if that white application that goes on it, we generally don't recycle those trees if they're more white than they are green. So, moving on to other items on this agenda, thank you for approving the consent agenda, including claim to Clean Harbors for the Household Hazardous Waste Collection event. Regarding personnel, yesterday we hired a new refuse site attendant, Bonnie Brinegar, and we're hoping for good results out of that. I have to say the candidates we had apply in this last round were really impressive. It was a really good group of folks, and so that's heartening in that those who weren't selected will remain on the list of eligibility for up to a year. So if they're available and we have a spot open up, we can give them a call and start training if that all works out. Also, looks like we're going to be able to talk to the Tribal Council about our trying to locate a site for a northern transfer station. Looks like we'll be able to approach them in January. I don't have a date yet, but we are working on that. Moving on to financial reports, cash in the bank. We've got 1.15 million in the bank, plus the 198,000 for the last month's rent, so to speak. So that's our cash. Our AR accounts receivable. Most of the accounts that are over 90 days due have been turned over to collections. Regarding claims approved by director, once again, our largest payment, as always, is to Hambro WSG for the good services they provided at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. And our second biggest bill last month was to the interfund cost plan. That's to pay the county for their personnel and auditing services and other support services they provide to the authority. But that's $30,000, so that's a good hunk of change. Looking at our overall financial reports, you see the cash reports for November coming in typically as we would expect. These 4 months, November, December, January, and February, tend to be our slowest months of the year. So it's good that currently we are $117,000 ahead of budget if we count both the authority service fees and the franchise fees. So we can anticipate that we will not be as far ahead in the coming months, but that's what happens in the winter. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Okay.
Thank you, Director Ward. At this point, we'll move on to in our agenda. We do not have anything for landfill post-closure, and we don't have anything for collections franchise at this time. Agenda item number 5 is transfer stations. Discussion and possible action regarding the potential for water and septic services at small volume transfer stations in Gasky and Klamath.
I have a PowerPoint that we're in the process of pulling up.
And I figured I would kind of preface this with the reason this is on here. When I and Director Ward were reviewing the agenda for today, we were going through the invoices and I was signing for invoices and I saw one for Roto-Rooter for porta potty services at both the Gasky and Klamath transfer stations. And we started discussing what was available out there and what wasn't. And so since these are long-term expenses, I figured I would ask if we could at least look at what it would cost to put utilities out there to possibly have some long-term savings.
And thank you very much for the question, because this is exactly the kind of thing that the board should be looking at. And no matter which direction you care to go on it, it's an ongoing expense. It's part of facilities management, and I appreciate the question and the opportunity to address it. And as you were summarizing, what is going on out there or what isn't? Mostly it's what isn't. In that these facilities don't have water, they don't have power, they don't have sewer connections. We have porta potties and a gate shack. And so I thought I should show you at least where these facilities are in context and how this all works, and then you can decide what it is you think we should do differently, perhaps. So here's the surrounding area of the Klamath Transfer Station. This little triangular portion is the county property on which the Klamath Transfer Station operates. It's surrounded by, I believe, largely privately held timberlands, and those are periodically logged. And so they use this access road to get to some of those timber stands back in this way. But this is the Klamath Transfer Station, and you can see there isn't really power, or this is an RV camp, I believe. I think it's Dad's. I may have the name of that wrong. Maybe Clamp Camp. Anyway, it's an RV park, and there is no, I talked to Community Development Director Heidi Kunstall, and she says there is no community service district in this area. And so if there's any water connection, that would be a well, and the power connection wouldn't be allowed until there is a building permit. The building permit would probably be associated with the whole project, meaning the power delivery, the construction of whatever facility housed the toilet and the sink, and the drilling of the well and the installation of the septic system. That would all need to be on the same permit, and this permit would then go through the county process before any of these things were developed. So there would be expense before any of those facilities were available. Looking at the transfer station itself, I just thought I would highlight how these things work. So we have that big sign that was actually recommended by one of our employees, just making it clear that customers are expected to stop and allow us to assess the load and have them look at the receipt and pay what's necessary before they unload. That keeps it clear and makes sure that we have that the customer has the money to pay for what they're unloading and that they know what they can be expected to do. And then we do have a separate area for unloading bulky items. I could go into the reasons for that, but essentially the expectation is they stop and pay for disposal before they unload. Here's the shack. The porta potties kind of on the side there. Here's a recycling bin, and here's the two trash bins. So people back up to these areas and they unload trash over the wall. And then periodically, then these lids are closed, and then Recology comes and collects those when we say the bins are full. The Gasky Transfer Station is somewhat similar, but there is a Gasky Community Services District, and you can see by where the houses are that almost certainly the power is a little bit more accessible and possibly also the sewer connections, but I have not investigated that further. I just discussed it with Heidi Kunstall, and you can see here's the Gasky Mountain School is here, so you go up the road, and we're just up the road. This is the high-tension power lines. They're coming into Del Norte County along 199. So the Gasky Transfer Station, here's the gate shack, and literally that is the one in Klamath is at least a Home Depot style shed, so it's a little larger. This one is more like a phone booth. It's really modest. And you can see it's just about the same size as the porta potty, maybe just a little bit bigger. But again, there's no connections of any kind at this site. So that's what currently is there. There is no equipment stored on site. Authority staff bring their own water or provide with a cell phone, and Roto-Rooter is paid to provide the service, the porta potties, and they have pump sinks at each location. Both these facilities are regularly subject to break-ins. They have incomplete fencing as the fencing is vandalized on a regular basis. And so there's probably 2 to 6 incidents per year at each facility, everything from driving off-road vehicles to dumping after hours to accessing the bins and pulling stuff out. All of that stuff happens. Then, of course, there's occasional incidents with animals, but since we've got those heavy closing lids, we haven't had the bear issues that we had historically before that change. So all of these changes would have to be implemented through, they'd have to be approved in advance, just like any planning process. So we would have to get a building permit that would describe everything that we wanted to do before they could hook up power. And power then would allow the rest of the construction activities to occur. At the Klamath Transfer Station, as that's a county property, the starting point would be to meet with the county's Future Facilities Goals Committee to discuss what the county wanted to do with the development of their property. As the Gasky Transfer Station is located on property leased from the U.S. Forest Service, the Forest Service would be the one to apply for the building permit application. So we would have to convince the Forest Service that they wanted to enhance their property in this way. Not impossible, but not a conversation that we have started yet either. So the board could pursue any one of these things, but several important things that I think the board needs to recognize. First and foremost, both the Klamath and Gasky facilities lose money every year. Even though we've adjusted the rates, that continues to be the case. Essentially, this is a community service that we provide to reduce the amount of materials that are illegally disposed in the forest, and we try to keep those rates low as an incentive for people to use those facilities. But that's the reason why those facilities lose money. We can put more money into these facilities, but that would only make them lose money more quickly. And so the board needs to set priorities about where you want to spend money in ways that we don't have a nickel to cover that expense. And so staff recommendation is really to take no action. We've continued on with these facilities as they are. I totally acknowledge that the porta potty expense is an ongoing expense that isn't going away and isn't necessarily getting cheaper. So that is a long-term issue. But because the authority doesn't own either of these properties, we really are not in a great position to be in the driver's seat for future development. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
The thought I'm having is that one way to change that equation would be to increase the amount and improve the amount that's being disposed there without spending any more money than we already do on the facility. So if we were actually taking in more, and it was cleaner, then that would make the equation come out a little better.
So you're suggesting if we could increase traffic, increase customers bringing materials into those facilities?
Gotcha.
Right.
All right, well, thank you for looking in. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you for looking into that. And
Happy to do it.
I
Really.
appreciate that. Oh, do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing no public comment, we will go on to agenda item number 6, which is General Solid Waste Authority Matters. 6.1.
Item 6.1 is the 5-year Regional Agency Integrated Waste Management Plan Review Report. This is something that's required every 5 years by CalRecycle. It's due at the end of January this year. So part of this activity is something we regularly do, but essentially it's reporting on all of our recycling, composting, special waste, household hazardous waste programs, and how they're being implemented in the city and the county and how effective they're being. And so we summarize this report. We go over the report with the task force, and then another part of this requirement is that the task force then comments on this report, and their comments go not only to this board as an advisory body, but also to CalRecycle, and CalRecycle considers their comments in their review of our 5-year plan. And so the quick and dirty of it is we have not met our recycling goals. We have met our commercial, our non-residential recycling goals quite well, but our residential recycling goals were a little bit behind. The target was 4.0 pounds per person, and we came in at 4.1 pounds per person per day. So there are a number of reasons why we believe these numbers went in the wrong direction, and mostly they have to do with the market downturns that we've discussed, the change in the recycling commodities, the reduction of the number of variety of materials that we're accepting through our recycling programs, and the period of time when there was no buyback in the community. All of these things reduced the amount of material that was actually being recycled, and furthermore, some of our community cleanups of, say, illegal dumps, that increases the amount of disposal. So both of those factors factor into us not meeting our recycling goal. And we think that we're on a good trajectory to get back on track if with a little bit more outreach and a little bit more focus on reducing contamination. But one can't be sure. So that is our current plan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. The next item, however, I should let you know, is Mr. Gibbs, Stephen Gibbs. He's a member of the Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force, and he's here to present the comments as prepared by the Solid Waste Task Force. But I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has on this item before we move
Should we
there.
wait then to provide feedback, or I guess I'm just sitting here scratching my head because I don't see things changing anytime soon. I see this number continuing to rise. And to me, specifically when we're asking you to engage in policy decision matters at a state level, data like this is extremely important to convey the message, probably that similar rural communities are able to convey, which is without a change potentially in state parameters. Yeah, we're getting some feedback today. Change in state parameters, we're going to continue to see this trend go upward instead of downward where we want it. I love your optimism, but personally, I don't see it happening.
Well, there's a lot of factors in play, and I agree. It is somewhat an optimistic approach, but the alternative is to figure out which recycling program needs to be expanded and how. And
Well,
so
the how's, we're all scratching our head on the how, and
We're-
until there's
we're-
a market,
we're working
gonna
on
happen.
efforts. There's and there are some things. For instance, CalRecycle increasingly is pushing local agencies like ours to expand our efforts on the mandatory commercial recycling requirements. Essentially, that every commercial business generating more than 4 cubic yards of trash per week needs to have a recycling program. And we have not been as aggressive as we might in making sure that businesses are doing that. And these kinds of requirements are increasingly present in that, for instance, in coming years, those same businesses not only will be required to have a recycling program, but be required to provide recycling containers to their customers.
and what's the timeline for implementation of this? Is it a CalRecycle policy or state law?
It's state law. Well, actually, I need to double check that because some of these things are CalRecycle regulations and some of them are state law, and I'm not sure which one it is. For us, on a practical basis, either one we have to abide by.
Can I ask?
But short of it is, increasingly they are ramping up these requirements.
Just want to know where you're going to get the staff to enforce this with whatever limited budgets we have.
I totally hear you.
Okay.
So can I ask if we continue to not meet that goal, will there be consequences?
There could be consequences. Potentially, under this law, the CalRecycle has the power to fine agencies like ours up to $10,000 a day. So yes, there is absolutely a big hammer they can throw. However, I believe the staff at CalRecycle are very aware of the market challenges resulting from the China sword and the resulting interactions. I don't believe in any way that our report is an outlier compared to what other communities are facing. So I do not anticipate in any way that there would be enforcement in sort of any fine situation. It would be more likely if they were to come back, they might come back saying, you know, you really need to step up in the following ways or answer to the following question. But I don't know exactly how that assessment will come out. That doesn't happen until after we submit all of these reports.
I'll wait until after the comment portion is presented. I will just make just a note as far as a correction on the, be on page 3 of 9. The date is incorrect of when this document will be adopted. I'm assuming we're going to adopt this today, 17 December 2019, not 17 November.
Section 3?
Of the non-disposal facility element.
Oh.
You get to page 3.
Oh, now, okay, now I'm with you.
Bottom of the page.
Actually, the board did adopt this. We took this up at the November meeting, and it was adopted.
Well, it wouldn't have been on November 17th then.
Fair enough, it was at the November meeting.
Okay.
November 19th.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
you.
that.
Yeah.
I will make that correction before we submit it.
All right. At this point, do we want to hear from the Solid Waste Task Force representative? I'm sorry, sir, I don't know your name.
This is Stephen Gibbs, also known as the Broom Slayer, because he has the Broom Slayer. It's a accolade we've offered him and actually given him business cards because he has contributed more volunteer hours than any other human towards this agency, and that he's spent days out at the Crescent City landfill removing Scotch broom, which is an invasive species and part of his personal passion, but he also serves on the Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force. And although he's not chair or vice chair, at their last meeting, the task force asked Mr. Gibbs to be their spokesperson at this forum.
Excellent. Thank you for being here.
I'm better at slaying broom than I am at public speaking, put it that way. So Ted covered some of the points I had on my list to cover, but basically, the overall solid waste flow in Del Norte County is better than it was. There's still ways to go, but from the dark days of 40% contamination and most of the recycling ending up in the landfill, we have made strides. So all of the details that Ted went over about per capita disposal rates and all that stuff, and Jalindra went out, and now there's somebody else. I mean, all that stuff's happening, and I'm assuming you're all pretty much aware and up to speed on that. So if you aren't, I can give you some background, but if not, I'll just go right through it. One thing that was significant that happened during the last year was Recology hired a Waste Zero specialist to provide outreach and education in schools and the community, connecting with business and residential customers to reduce contamination in curbside and business collection and the community drop-off bins. That is an ongoing program that will continue. There's funding for that through Recology and also a grant. The cleanup efforts for homeless encampments will continue, funded by grants and from the authority budget, and also efforts being made to pursue methods to prevent illegal dumping. The authority is working to build and maintain a cooperative relationship with the Harbor District for collection of fishing line, oil recycling, and composting of fish waste. They are also supporting the harbor in securing oil spill equipment and oil separation storm drains. As far as recycling, the task force discussed mandatory trash and recycling pickup to improve rates through incentive/penalty pricing that is currently in effect, but the task force concluded that it is not desirable at this time because difficult to access or impractical to access outlying areas for curbside pickup, very unpopular with self-haulers, and the contamination of curbside bins has improved due to recent changes put in place by Recology. Compost and organics, food recovery. Food recovery, food reuse, and redistribution are goals of a Cal State or Cal Recycle grant to provide for food insecure people in Del Norte County and adjacent tribal lands. Also, composting workshops are given 3 times a year to divert food waste from the landfill and reduce methane production. The resulting compost provides an excellent soil amendment. Hambro processes and hauls green waste to out-of-county facilities. The authority should look to develop in-county sites for this purpose. Community education and outreach have been supported by grants through the California Department of Conservation. Recology has increased outreach in local schools to educate students who will then educate their parents. Providing waste audits to local businesses to improve and increase recycling amounts is another part of the program. High contamination at drop-off bins in unmonitored locations is being addressed by locating a satellite transfer station in Smith River. Fencing, occasional staffing, surveillance cameras, and warning signs are all strategies for compliance at the drop-off bins. Resources for outreach regarding changes to product stewardship laws as they affect Del Norte residents, business, industries, and agencies should be provided. The task force supports expanded outreach efforts through posters in transit buses, promotion of reuse containers at businesses, public recognition of those who recycle correctly, as well as enforcement against improper recycling. The area in front of the transfer station walls could be used for structures and artwork promoting recycling. The authority should continue to support Del Norte County businesses which legally collect and resell recovered materials and products. In November 2019, the authority adopted a revised non-disposal facilities element. And I didn't quite finish household hazardous waste. The authority should continue the evaluation of the effectiveness of household hazardous waste collection events and should continue holding them. The authority received a $100,000 grant from, sorry about this, the Cal Recycle program. And I'm sorry, but that's as far as I got. I'm better at pulling plants. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments. Does the board have any comments or questions?
I would like to see, and I don't know if this is exactly the right time or place, but I would like to see reports from the people like Family Resource Center on how and they're spending their grant money and what the results look like. Is that something that we can make happen here in front of the board?
Kind of. In that we will be working with the Del Norte Food Council as they implement that grant, and there's lots of reasons to be working with them, SB 1383, our own requirements, et cetera. However, it's important to recognize that they don't work for us. So we can invite them but we don't have any oversight
Okay.
role
All
whatsoever
right.
with respect to that grant or their activities under that grant. However, staff are meeting with them and trying to work as closely as we can so that we're all helping each other. And of all of the grants that any other agency might have, the authority is very interested in the success of this program. And so we can invite them periodically to give an update if that's what you're looking
What's
for.
the protocol for doing that?
Well, I've heard the request, so I think we can do that. But to let you know, the kinds of things that we are following up on, tomorrow I'll be meeting with the Community Development Director, Heidi Kunstal, to discuss how to address these many requirements, because as I discussed at the last meeting, SB 1383 doesn't just cover solid waste agencies. It covers procurement, it covers landscaping, Cal Green, food waste recovery for animals. It does a lot of things that our agency has not done before. And sometimes some of those things our agency won't ever do, and we need to be working with the other agencies who are doing those things and to inform them about what their obligations are and how we might be able to navigate this to make programs that are most effective for our community.
Mr. Ward, is the response from the Solid Waste Task Force, is that what is referenced as attachment B
I believe so, yes, sir.
in the report? Okay.
Yes.
My question is in the, under 4.5, item number 2, when it talks about statement regarding whether programs are meeting their goals, it identifies that they're not meeting their goals, and then it makes the statement that in compliance with PRC section 41751, that specific steps are being taken by local agencies, including the county and the city, to achieve the obviously the end goals. When I look at the Solid Waste Task Force comments, I do not see specific steps laid out that identify that. So, I mean, I guess my question is, if we're going to state in the report that program goals are not being met and that there are specific steps being taken, the Solid Waste Task Force is a really great summary of everything that's happened and the things that are being done. I didn't read in there what I would identify as specific steps to, in a sense, this is stating that there are corrective steps being taken. And I'm not sure that I would be able to read that document, attachment B, and be able to know which of these are these specific steps that are these corrective actions being taken. And if in fact they are steps that there is an expectation that the county and the city are also responsible for being partners in taking these steps, then we need to have those clearly delineated out so that we can report back to our member agencies to say, this is an expectation as a member agency and in a bigger sense as a community partner of things that need to be done. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just was not able to connect the dots between 4.52 and the Solid Waste Task Force comments.
Understood. Part of what the task force letter identifies is how the markets, how our activities have changed over the last couple of years and what new things are happening. And so what has changed is the real downturn where we didn't have a buyback center and materials were being disposed of that were being placed in recycling bins. That situation has changed, and that is reported in the task force letter. What has also changed is the hiring of the zero waste outreach person by Recology. That also is new. And similarly, the processing of materials at the Recology Humboldt facility is also new. So all of those things, we're hoping will get us back on track in terms of recycling compared to where we've been in the last couple of years. And how would you like us to make that more clear?
I think that being able to identify those as specific steps as opposed to them just, they read like comments. And they're even identified as comments.
Right.
I think if we're being asked to identify what the specific steps are, I wouldn't want somebody reading through this and read it as a narrative document and not be able to identify the fact that these steps are being taken. If that means that things that qualify as specific steps are simply italicized in the document and notated that these are reflections of specific steps. I think that they need to be highlighted so that when this document is evaluated, that they're just not read over. Because you identified three things really quickly, but you identified three things very quickly because you live these on a day-to-day basis. I would not make that assumption about somebody that is disconnected from our community being able to do that. And so I would personally think that it would be to our advantage to be able to highlight those specific steps that are being taken in the midst, because there is a very broad narrative that is written into this that talks about the history as well as the recent history of significant impacts that have affected our ability to meet our goals.
Right.
But in the midst of that, I'm afraid that you might lose the steps that are being taken, and I wouldn't want that to be the case. We shouldn't have to explain the document. The document needs to be able to stand on its own once we submit it. That just my input.
I very much value and appreciate that comment. And so what I would, couple things. As you can see from the structure of the 5-year review, it is a bureaucratic exercise, and the people who are on the receiving end of this are accustomed to that format. So I fully anticipate that we'll be discussing that with the Cal Recycle staff as they review it. However, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. It's at this point, reading it, it's more cryptic than it needs to be. And so I would be happy to write a cover letter summarizing this discussion and basically saying, this is what we've done, this is the overview of the situation, this is how we're responding, these are our intents. If you would like me to do that and add that before we submit this to Cal Recycle, I'd be happy to do that. I could either review that with the chair or bring it back to the January meeting, as this is not due until the end of January.
Yeah, I don't need it coming back. I think that a cover letter like that identifies those things and even identifies the areas, the point numbers, reflected. This is in point number 14. This is and a cover letter by you, I think would suffice. And I don't have any need to see that again. I just think it would be a good idea.
I appreciate the direction. Okay.
That would be fine. Yeah. It
Okay,
looks like
I'll consider that consensus direction, and I will include a cover letter before we submit this whole packet to Cal Recycle, and I will make the adjustment on that have been discussed.
Sorry, I do have a question. Is it normal for them to reach out to you for clarification? with
Very.
This kind of?
Very.
Okay.
Yeah, the typical response is just this. It's an engagement process. It's a discussion about all of our programs. Then the person on the Cal Recycle end is wading through this, and they'll often make a phone call, and we'll discuss each of these programs and what we're doing, and
Very good.
it goes from there.
Very good.
Thank you. Yep.
All right. I'd just like to thank the Solid Waste Task Force for all their hard work on this report. And at this point, it looks like our agenda has...
Any public comment on this item?
Oh, do we have any public comment on our Solid Waste Task Force report?
Do you actually need a motion to submit this? And the
No. I mean, I will submit this because it's required. If the board wants to take action to direct me to submit it, that would be fine.
No, I just want to make sure that you don't,
Just like all those other required documents, when they're required, we submit them.
all right, very
All
good.
right. Thank you. As I was saying, I think that we have gone through almost all of our agenda. At this point, we're going to adjourn to closed session, and we're going to be talking about the public employee performance evaluation for our director ward. Any public comment on that, on our closed session item? All right, seeing no public comment, we are adjourned.